Hi, my name is Sensi, and today we're going to be talking about the settings on a compressor. And this is going to be my first video on a series of videos I'm going to do on dynamics processing, so I thought I might keep it simple and basically just get to know the basic settings of a compressor before moving on to the advanced stuff. So what is compression? Compression is reducing the dynamic range of a signal. So what does that mean? Let's say you have a vocal take and it has really quiet parts where the singer wasn't belting as much, and it has really loud parts where the singer was screeching some note. A compressor is going to reduce the dynamic range, meaning that it's going to take those really loud parts and turn them down to be a similar volume to the really quiet parts. And compression is basically the bread and butter for your audio engineering career. Anything you're doing, mixing, mastering, basic editing, cleanup, you're going to want to use compression at some point in your life when handling audio. The same goes for EQ. EQ and compression are your two best friends, your two biggest tools, so it's important to get to know them as much as you can. So let's dive right in and see what the controls are. So we're going to start with two of the controls, one of them being the threshold and the other one being the ratio. And if the explanation in this video isn't good enough, then I'm going to be linking a video in the description, which does a great visual job of displaying how the threshold and the ratio interact with each other. So before I said the compressor will turn down the loud parts, but for it to determine what the loud parts are, it's going to need to have a reference. So that's what the threshold is. The threshold basically tells the compressor, hey, anything louder than this is considered loud, so I want you to turn it down. So for demonstration purposes, well, let's just say we set it to -21. The ratio is how hard you're going to be compressing. So think of this kind of like a graph for now. You can see that it's currently a 1-to-1 ratio, meaning that it goes up by 1, over by 1, up by 1, over by 1. Think of it as a slope. Anything below the threshold will always be 1-to-1, meaning that whatever goes in goes out. Anything above the threshold, however, you can change. So let's set this to 2-to-1. Now you can see on this graph that for every 2 dB of audio that goes in above the threshold, it only outputs 1 dB. So how does this work? How does this relate to audio? Well, I'm going to play a track really quick in the background, and you'll be able to see the difference. So we'll set this to a 1-to-1 ratio for now. And we'll set the threshold somewhere down, not that far, somewhere down here. So you'll be able to see that there are little valleys in between. And we'll slowly turn up the ratio. Now you'll be able to see that the dark gray waveform in the background is the original audio, and the light gray is the compressed audio. And already at a 2.6-to-1 ratio, you can see that it's leveling it out pretty well. There's no huge jumps anymore like there were last time. Let's turn it up even more. Now basically here we've hit a flat line. Nothing's gonna get above the threshold. As you can see here, it's basically become a block of audio. Everything's pretty much leveled as much as it can be. So 100-to-1 is a very extreme ratio. You typically don't want to use that. You want to stick to a lighter ratio like 4-to-5, or if you're doing vocals, something maybe a little bit less. So if we adjust the threshold a little bit, set the ratio back to 100-to-1, you can see here that the quieter parts aren't getting compressed at all. The louder parts are. And you'll be able to see the compression amount with this graph up here. So you'll be able to see if we turn the threshold all the way up, no compression. Turn it down, a lot of compression. So you might be wondering, okay, if I turn down my loudest parts, won't that make everything quieter? Well, you're right. So that's why we have the makeup gain. When you turn up the makeup gain, it will restore any of the lost volume that you had. So it won't increase the peaks or increase the valleys. It'll just raise the volume overall. So you still have that consistency, but now it's just equally as loud. So you can see right here, you have the peak meters, they're relatively the same, but you have the average meters here as well. The average meters for the old one, the original audio, they're wild all over the place. They're going up and down. They're really quiet, even though the peaks are the same. Compared to the compressed audio over here, more consistent and louder. That is one application for a compressor, is to make things louder and more consistent. So the last two controls, being attack and release, well, require a little bit more explanation. So with attack and release, you're going to be going through things a little bit differently. It's a little harder to understand and hear than the threshold and the ratio. So for this example, I have a block of audio, which is basically just a 1K sine wave that goes through at negative 18 dB and then at negative 21. And so you'll be able to kind of see how the attack and release work. So I've set them to the maximum amount here, and I'm just going to record the result of the compression to a new track. Okay. So you might be able to notice something a little bit different between these two tracks, which is this fade in right here. Well, this is the compression being applied. Attack and release are there because the compressor isn't instant. It's not going to instantly snap your audio to the right level. Because if it did that, it would introduce a lot of distortion and a lot of coloration and just a lot of nasty things that aren't that great. You need that fade in for things to sound natural. And for basically them to sound a little bit better than having it be instant. Even the fastest attack time on here, which is 0.005 seconds. If we record it again, we'll still have that fade in at the beginning. So, the same thing with release. If we set it all the way, it will have that fade in. So what does that mean? Well, the attack is how fast does it fade in. So if we set it to the default value of 0.25, or let's raise it to 10 milliseconds. You'll notice that the fade in is a little bit more gradual. And the same thing with the release. Let's say we turn it up a little bit. Something like 367 milliseconds, why not? You'll notice that the fade out gets a little bit longer. So compression isn't instant, so that's what the attack setting is for. But you also need to ease off of that compressor. You need to tell the compressor, hey, you know, kind of back off a little bit, but don't do it all at once, because again, that would introduce a lot of distortion and coloration and just generally bad stuff. You want to ease into it. So just kind of lower the amount of compression that you're doing by this amount of time. And that's what the release setting is for. When and how to adjust these settings is going to be covered in a later video. These are just an explanation of the settings, but hopefully that provides a good start for you to start going out and experimenting with a compressor and just seeing what different settings give you. Thank you for watching this video. Hopefully this helped. If you have any more topics, please let me know in the comments section below, or message me on Discord.